Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. My name is Will Critchlow, founder and CEO at SearchPilot, and I am extremely excited this week. We've got a fantastic guest joining me. Christine Ullmann joins us from John Lewis, and the Brits in the audience will need absolutely no introduction to John Lewis, but I thought for our global audience, it was worth just giving you a little bit of context because it will lead into what we're about to talk about today. So John Lewis is an iconic British brand, major retailer, department store, focusing on the premium end of the market, premium products, and as you'll hear, has a legacy going back decades, or over 100 years of building that kind of premium brand positioning. And what we're going to talk about today is how that translates and how you think about operating in search and in AI discovery when you're playing to the premium end of the market. So Christine, thank you for coming on the call, and really great to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Me too. Let's get straight into it. So I think maybe that's just the place to start with, coming off the intro, is I know that you have done a lot of thinking about this question of when your target audience isn't necessarily every searcher. And especially when people are doing more generic searches, but only some of them are looking for the kind of the premium products or the premium services that you offer. So how are you thinking about that today?
I think the most important thing, while it seems really novel, it's something that we all had in the back of our minds for a long, long time. It's that understanding of who am I, who's my target audience, and what am I to them. So rather than looking purely at the search, at the keyword, at the landing page, to actually genuinely understand what is that searcher doing when they conduct a search, and how am I the right answer to them? And to not be afraid to also think, okay, if somebody is still in the browsing consideration stage of black dress, to really signal what you find here is premium quality, service, sustainability. It is not your mass market. If you need this for one event and then you're going to donate it or throw it away, we might not be the place for you because, and this is where the innovation I think really comes in. Google will understand that. We now live in a hyper-personalized world in terms of SERPs. I strongly believe that if you make it really, really clear on page, off page, in your entire digital ecosystem, who you are and what you stand for, you will be shown to the right people. So optimize for your audience, not for your keywords.
Yeah, the audience side of things, I think, that's where the resonance comes. Yeah. And I think one of the ways that folks outside the UK even might be familiar with the brand is the Christmas advertising has, I think, gone global. Probably, you see the scale of views on YouTube, and it's probably more people than there are in the United Kingdom. So
yes.
Yeah, it's definitely been seen more than that. And that connection to the brand, I think, is interesting because when you bring the values to everything you do, then that is Google has kind of paid lip service for a long time, I think, to understanding that, but we're kind of gradually on the journey to that actually becoming true, aren't we? When you think about the your money or your life type signals.
Yeah, Google is getting better at understanding that it isn't just about a backlink profile. I'm not saying PageRank is dead. PageRank is far from dead. Links still very much matter, but it isn't about link metrics like it used to be. I still remember the days 15 years ago when we had these giant spreadsheets and which C block have you got how many links from? Are they do follow, no follow, anchor text mixing, all of this sort of stuff. It's not about that anymore. It's about the context and the sentiment. So I could probably still go out and buy directories at 200 links a pop or spun content on blogs from God knows where. Those aren't the links that matter anymore. But if you do get constant coverage, for example, in the media, back in the day, that was seen as, I don't want to say worthless, but if you had your link from the BBC, the Guardian, the New York Times, that was that done, move on to the next publisher. Whereas now, if high-end publishers with a certain audience and certain value set mention you on a regular basis, Google manages to place that, and LLMs even more so, manage to place that within the context of that publisher's audience. So you build layers and layers of authority, and with technology understanding meaning in terms of entities, in terms of sentence structure, and is not a filler word. It puts two words in relationship. So if you say, John Lewis will not only deliver your oven, they will also recycle your old one for you. Google will understand that this is a value add. And if it is published in a high-end publisher towards a certain audience, then if that audience starts asking what is the right oven for my kitchen, you're much more likely to be showing up in the SERPs, but you're also much more likely to be cited in Gemini. If you have the right resources, you are much more likely to show up in your answers. So it's about those layers of context, still backlinked if possible.
Yeah, of course. I think the that personalization layer comes in two or three layers of places, really, in these models. So my thinking of this is, you think back to kind of early personalization, and it was very much just Google kind of taking those signals that it sees at query time and giving maybe different results to different people in different locations and those kinds of things. And I think the evolution of that, where we're taking into account history, and especially on the AI side, right, where it potentially is actually knowing things or like storing things in memory about you. I think this is leading us. I've been talking about this very recently as we're in a search volume 1 world, because even if you're doing a kind of head query search, you mentioned black dresses, right? Like that kind of search, what's actually being processed is not just that. It's all of the context about, okay, who is this person who's doing this search? What did they look for before? What do I know about them? Where do they live? What are their preferences, priorities? And when you factor that all in together, that's unique, essentially. And so search volume is kind of not the metric that it used to be either. We used to have spreadsheets of that as well.
Yes, very, very true. I mean, all of the metrics, and that is, I think, something that causes a lot of people anxiety. All of the metrics we knew, they still exist, but they don't mean the same thing anymore. So if we take a look into your world, we used to just experiment on tactics. We should now experiment on metrics. Are the metrics that I'm measuring really delivering the value that I'm expecting them to deliver? Is tracking search volume, is tracking visibility, is tracking traffic really tracking the value that I want? In terms of John Lewis, for me, one of the very, very important things is to actually take an omni-channel approach. An omni-channel in the sense of we have a physical branch network. That is a trust metric that in the AI world means a lot. For a long time, it was nice. You did your little bit of local SEO. You optimized on Google Maps. Then you came in with across maps so that you were visible across all devices. Now that is a signal that you have actually invested in the customer. So if somebody is looking, if we go back to the oven or the sofa, the AI can tell you this is available to look at in real life within your driving distance. And by the way, that shop offers an extended warranty. They have free food for kids in the restaurant. There is parking. They're within a shopping center. There's parking there. So all of these additional data points become really important. And I think we've seen the announcement as part of Google I/O, but they've been teasing it before then with the integration with Gmail, with Calendar. They will get to a point, Google in particular, to really understand you as a person, your habits and your needs and your values. So if you go, my oven broke, what should I do? It's no longer about query fan outs or like how many additional searches can Google conduct. It is about that understanding. What is your location? What are your habits? Google Maps is tracking you. Are you a driver or do you cycle? All of these things will suddenly come into generating a result that is appropriate to you, and that may be a web link or maybe driving directions. Sorry.
I think there's going to be all kinds of excitement and opportunities for chaos as well. That we saw in the early rollouts. Should I put rocks on my pizza or whatever it might be, and those kinds of things. I think we'll see a whole new layer and level of those kind of things once they're ingesting this personal data. But yeah, and it's really interesting. We've talked a little bit about this in the we talked on our show before about product search and merchant center and that side of, because that's an evolution that's happening in parallel with the AI revolution. It's quite compatible, I think, actually, because it's all about this kind of broader trend of PDPs being the thing, right? Product detail pages for those not in the retail e-commerce jargon, and if we think even a couple of years ago, it was much more about the category pages and the listing pages, and now we're seeing, I think, both AI and merchant center product search pushing us towards the detail pages. And that's like you mentioned, experimenting with the metrics. That's why we're seeing some things like there are certain experiments that you might want to run that are driving at visibility in product search, right? So product merchant center impressions is one of those metrics that we've kind of toyed with, because it can be a leading indicator of the success that you might get.
Yeah. And you mentioned complexity. I think it becomes really interesting as well, because the tactics that may move the needle in that space may not actually happen on the page that you are trying to move. So all of these ideas of we must put all of the copy on the same page, for a mostly mobile customer, that's completely overwhelming. You're much better off linking in fact sheets, linking in, rather than having an elaborate product description on many things like your beauty products or technology. It makes so much more sense to put just the high level details with a link through to the full fact sheet. And for example, I don't know, is it vegan or is it energy efficient? Kind of the value level, so people can make a decision. I want to engage with this product, which again, if you as a value-led customer then conduct a search or work with your AI, you're much more likely to be suggested, even though that full fact sheet isn't available on page. So that whole question, how does internal linking, for example, create topic clusters? How do things fit together? What role do cross-category thematic hubs play? I'm a huge fan of moving away from a purely pyramid-based taxonomy to more of a hub and spoke model, and to really address the customer need and the way customers shop, which doesn't mean rip up the playbook and do away with the e-com pyramid. It's about how can we acknowledge that certain points on the pyramid might be on different rungs but still adjacent, and how can we build those connections in ways that when you conduct a search, either you as the searcher or your agent or your AI will make that connection for you, and you will actually discover, yes, this is what I need right now. Is it information? Is it inspiration? Is it a product? Or is it all of the above? Because we hear all about the funnel being dead. I don't think the funnel fully existed ever. Well, possibly in the very, very early days. But how often did our parents walk past a shop window and went, oh, that looks really nice. I'm just going to walk into that shop. Which part of the funnel was that, when they then walk out with something completely different than the thing they saw?
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
I think we're seeing that digitally now.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some really, I remember there was some old research, 10 or 15 years ago, great research came out of Google into how people are using tabs in Chrome when tabbed browsing came along. And that's one of my mental models for what's going on with things like fan out queries is like they're opening the tabs so you don't have to. And that's... It's looping around, it's skipping, it's doing different bits of the funnel all at once in parallel, and I think that all that stuff is really, really true. One of the things that we're finding increasingly in this kind of multi-metrics world is that we're finding that when we're running our experiments, the output is less often a single recommendation. Right, so, you can think of it as kind of more traffic good. Is it and you just like the system spits out a kind of thumbs up, thumbs down, Roman emperor style. But what we're increasingly seeing is more complex picture emerging, and that we're a source of confidence, a sort of source of credibility into that decision-making process. But there's still a decision-making process to happen off the back of it, which is, it could be a conflict between visibility and conversion rate. It could be a conflict between visibility and click-through rate. It could be a conflict between LLM traffic and regular search traffic. And we've got some case studies coming on this stuff soon, which are hopefully will be shared publicly very soon. But we're seeing experiments that have, a positive for one metric and negative for the other across those kinds of things. And that has to feed into your decision-making process in a more complex way, I think.
Yes, very much so. And while we're on the positive and negative, let's not underestimate the value of tests that avoid harm. I think that's a really important thing. We look for positive results, and if it's not a positive result, we file it, we forget about it, we move on. But why don't we, especially within e-commerce, make more of a song and dance about the harm we avoided? What if something seemed like a really good idea and it shows a clear downward trend, and as a result it wasn't implemented? How much damage did we save our companies, our employers, our clients from by not just going ahead going, oh, you know what, I did that in a different industry 5 years ago, so it
Best
seems
practice.
like a good idea. Let's test everything. So that's something that I've really started at John Lewis as well, to get everyone to challenge me. Don't just accept that because I know SEO and I've been doing it for 500 million years, I know everything. Please, when I say something, call me out and say, this is a hypothesis, let's test it. And if we haven't tested it, don't take it at face value any more than you would your own ideas. If you find something in Google and you think this is a good result, come to me and go, we found this, no idea how it got there. Let's figure out if we can be a good result on the same level. So that whole, it democratizes SEO a lot more, that it now becomes more about the customer. But if we look at purely what isn't a good idea, that democratizes that as well. We start looking at it more as a just ecom best practice, or overall just good citizenship. We're
I
ultimately
was going to
all in
say,
this together.
Yeah, it made me think two things. One is there's the version of avoiding harm that you mentioned, where we had a thing, we thought it was a good idea, turned out not to be, we avoided harm, and that's, as you say, great. There's also this idea that comes up quite a lot. We call it default to deploy, which is, this is a thing that we want to do for values-led reasons, for usability reasons, for whatever it might be. And so we're not looking for a positive result. We're just looking for not a negative result. Yep. In other words, if this comes out neutral, inconclusive, we're going to ship it because we want it. We want it for either because we believe it's going to be valuable in the future, or because we want it for non-SEO reasons. And we're just doing the do no harm check, right? Maybe we wouldn't roll out this messaging in this place if it turned out to be negative to our search performance. But if it's neutral, if it's inconclusive, that's good enough because we're actually doing it for a different reason. Yeah. So that's powerful,
particularly relevant, I think, in that. In the e-com space in general, but in the segment that John Lewis is in. So if you are targeting a value-led customer who isn't necessarily looking purely at price, it is obviously that whole promise, never knowingly undersold, on service, quality and price. Sometimes you may want to highlight the service and the quality a lot more than the price, which may ultimately reduce your conversion rate, but really, really highlight who you are, what you stand for, so deliver long-term value for the company. So I think especially in that segment, it's really, really important to understand who you are and what your ultimate goals are. What is your hierarchy of needs, and what is the hierarchy of needs for your customers?
It's almost like EEAT before it was cool.
Yes. I jokingly say internally, spit on Lewis when he came up with that promise 125 years ago. He must have seen Google coming, because if you read through some of the older writing from 100 years ago, it is EEAT in old-fashioned terms. It's fantastic.
I love the idea that 125 years ago the founder was doing SEO, so like some kind of crazy foresight time traveler engine. And then there's the other cultural impact that comes from avoiding negative impacts, which is that it means that you can test more boldly. And this is something that I think a lot about, because what we're trying to do is very much change culture, change the way that we think about an experimentation program, not just where you have a list of ideas and we're going to test those ideas and find the good ones, but actually we can change the ideas because, and this is particularly, I think, important I mean, every space is competitive, but in a space where you've got competition, you've got other folks who are trying to compete with you, and if you can be bolder in what you'll try than them, knowing that you've got the safety net that if something turns out to be a bad idea, well, that's okay. An example of this, we've done a couple of bolder experiments doing things like completely removing meta descriptions, which would have been a hard recommendation to just say, hey, I think this might be a good idea. Right? What are the odds it's a good idea? 40% odds of it being a good idea. But turned out to be, in one particular case, it's not always a good idea. But the point being, when you've got the testing capability, when you've got the experimentation program, it can change the kinds of things that become ideas, from I'm confident this is a good idea down to this is a high variance, high interest idea. Let's see if it's wildly good or wildly bad, and roll it out appropriately.
Yes, very much. And you move from the what to the why. So something might be, I might read that it was a good idea, that you removed meta descriptions. I saw the Search Pilot case study, it was positive. What if I test the same thing and it's not? I can then ask, so why is it a good thing in one context and not a good thing in another? What happens if I iterate on that experiment? Can I find my context where it's a good idea? Do I need to change something else? And then suddenly it becomes an incrementally double good idea. So it moves away from tactics towards strategies, and actually makes you question not your entire website. Even within retail, not your entire website will respond the same way. So what is the purpose of the specific area that you're experimenting on? What is the purpose of the specific bits and pieces that you're trying to modify? And how do they relate to the other parts of your website and the other elements on that page? So things like, if I add structured data to a page, will it have an impact? Well, that probably kind of depends on what that page is used for. If you add structured data to a PDP, you're probably going to see a beneficial uplift in terms of SERP features being visible, your price showing up. It might help your Merchant Center visibility. It will possibly potentially help your AI visibility. Although even in Merchant Center and AI, I know agentic shopping isn't a thing in the UK yet, so I haven't tested it there, but in product recommendations, the jury's out on schema. But if you add schema to a PLP, it's probably going to have much lower impact, because how many elements do you have that require structured data? Your ratings and reviews, potentially to an extent, but then what? You might be way better off adding good, rich content to a PLP, and old wisdom would have said, oh God, that content pushes commerce down and it won't help. What if that content is actually inspirational with an outward link to your editorial that really inspires people to shop the category they're on? The ones who are undecided might convert at a much better rate, but 3 clicks in or 2 sessions in, who knows? So really play around with all of that. If you're selling nuts and bolts, you probably don't need as much inspo content, but you need really, really good measurements and probably some close-ups or some diagrams. If you're selling fashion, yes, measurements are good. It's nice to know that your trousers are going to fit, but it's way more important to know that they'll look good.
Yeah. It leads to all kinds of brainstorming and ideas that may not have been kind of classic SEO checklist, SEO audit kind of outputs, right?
Yes.
And that's actually what I'm kind of most excited by in our work, is that we get away from just that, you've got 2 H1s on the page, or whatever kind of checklisty stuff that every enterprise site has a million of those, and I'm sure you get them in your inbox every day of people going, I found this thing, and trying to figure out what actually might move the needle, and what is values aligned, what is strategic, is I think some of the most interesting and exciting. The other direction that I wanted to take things in a little bit is the kind of the more organizational side. So obviously one feature of working in the enterprise is that you've got a big website and a lot of authority and a lot of brand reputation and a lot of products to work with. the other side of it is you've got a lot of colleagues and a lot of teams to work with. And, whether that's an experimentation team, a product team, engineering team, all of those kinds of different people who can be on different days, in different modes, excited, daunted, anti, different kinds of ways of working. And I know you've got a lot of experience of all of this, but how are you finding that side of things evolve? Because I'm assuming that, I know that AI features in search are kind of driving so much more interest around the business into how does discovery work, in ways that SEO hasn't had that engagement for years.
Yes, very true, they do. I've said for a few years that the more senior you get with an SEO, the less it becomes about actual optimization. It becomes a people discipline. And it isn't about selling SEO. I think that's where in the olden days, SEO often went wrong by trying to brand itself as the low-cost marketing channel. So people went, oh, it's free, so it must not be all that valuable, or it just happens. It is about that excitement. It's about what makes a developer want to engage. And my happiest moments are the ones, and they most often happen with developers who initially go, oh, SEO people, they're just here to tell me that I must code things in a specific way. So throughout my career, I've always had developers who are slightly hostile to the SEO message. And to see when they get excited and they suddenly start owning that. And quite often that happens exactly through experimentation. I think you and I have seen it when you hand a developer the opportunity to leverage a testing tool and to really see the impact of small changes, so they can then start talking about, I've added value not just by speeding up the website or delivering a certain feature. I've added value by actually adding customers to my organization. And they become advocates. So similarly, in brand marketing, I think quite often channels and brand is a little bit of a friction situation. If you show, no, I actually absolutely love what you're doing on the brand side. Social, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of social search and social SEO, but let's face it, social is where a lot of searching is happening. If you look at the stats, you don't think of it as search, but the TikTok search bar has seen exponential growth. They've got some figures that are absolutely mind-blowing. Should I now start optimizing my videos? No, I should actually ask myself, what are people doing there? And then I can start engaging with the social team around, what does discovery mean in the modern age? It means both. It means visual, it means being inspired. From an SEO perspective, circle to search for me is so interesting when we start talking about visual optimization of concepts in ways that previously only happened on Pinterest. And Pinterest is absolutely amazing with matching aesthetics, but it is going really commercial. So how can we leverage some of that amazing imagery that we shoot for our Christmas campaign to actually drive customers who want to discover, who want to understand, how do I decorate my living room? That becomes more of a success than the fact that they order a cushion or not. It's more of I got my inspiration from John Lewis. I'll keep that in mind next time I actually want to do something, actually want to add something. And by removing that pressure as well, we all live way past peak stuff. So to not have the impression that a retailer only wants a relationship with you if you're in shopping mode, I think that makes you want to engage with that retailer a lot more. That it's okay. My local IKEA seems to be a little bit of a get-together for the local kids. It's really, really funny when you go there, like relatively late, I don't know, after 6 p.m. or on the weekend, you get groups of kids just sitting on the sofas eating ice cream. How amazing is that? That's building a community. We as retailers should really encourage that, because what if you are the subject of the next TikTok? You could go viral and your brand will be out there. It will become a lot more discoverable in all of the other channels. So let's think about that element of community as well.
Yeah. I love the brand impact flowing in both directions. So you've got the fact that showing up in search, whatever surface that might be, whether it's TikTok or whether it's YouTube or classic search or AI powered search, all of those things are kind of brand impressions. And so there's the effect flowing that way. And then there's the effect flowing the other way, that when your colleagues in brand marketing do their job as well as they do, you sometimes get the click from what we would have called position 3, right? Whatever we call that these days, position pixel 550, that you might get the click even though a cheaper competitor outranks you perhaps, but because that particular searcher isn't looking for that, they're looking for the brand values that you're bringing to the party.
Yes, absolutely. And then there are certain cultures, countries that paid search is present, but customers aren't as likely to click on them because they're suspicious of any paid placement. So again, even the pixel depth becomes questionable. One of the things I would love to actually understand, do customers know that the product sells when you conduct a category search or a trend search, the product sells you see mid-page that they're not paid for? I suspect a lot of customers don't actually engage with Google Shopping because they think it's just the next advert. Just a hypothesis. It's something that I don't know if I can even test. But would love
I've
to
wanted
know.
for a long time to run a focus group and just observe normal people using different kinds of search surfaces, and ask them, why do you think this result is there, across paid and organic? Sometimes it'd be like, well, that's an advert. And I am certain. I mean, I get it wrong sometimes. They've obfuscated it in both directions pretty effectively. But that feeling where sometimes you click on a thing that you thought was organic, and then you see the paid search click ID, and you're like, "Huh, that was an ad. I didn't you got me."
Yep.
But especially when you get outside our industry and you're kind of talking to ordinary people, I would love to just get a sense of how people think those results get there, which ads they know are ads, which things aren't ads that they think are ads, and so on and so forth. And I'd love to have tracked that over time. I wish if anybody knows of a longitudinal study where somebody has taken the evolution of Google search results, and in the early days it was glaringly obvious, right? The bright green, bright blue background, those early backgrounds. Then they made it yellow. Then they got rid of it and had the border. Then they got rid of the border, and so on and so on. And so I think I would love to do that study. It's kind of tangential to my work these days, so I don't know if I'll get around to it. But if anybody else knows of any of that kind of stuff, then please do share. I would love to see somebody do that study.
That would be fascinating. One of my very, very early roles, 2007, I worked at Yahoo, at Overture, so on the paid side.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
I started life in paid search at Overture, the inventors of paid search, who unfortunately missed the boat. But Yahoo, for a while, tried to position itself as the more high-quality Google. Paid ads were manually reviewed to 100% for a much, much longer period after Google allowed things to go live much sooner. And it was very much about context and relevancy. And one of my early roles was, as they were evolving away from that to catch up with Google or keep up with Google at the time, it was the question, how do we need to structure our organic and paid results to maximize paid clicks? And we did internal studies around SERP layouts and result sets and how much should we train our paid algo to take organic results into account. I don't know about vice versa because I was on the paid side, but we definitely took the organic results into account and started training the machine on what is a good result, what's a bad result, within the context of the whole SERPs.
It's interesting. I know for sure that a lot of normal people, if you like, outside of our industry, think that clicks they thought clicks were a ranking factor long before it was acknowledged that nav boost and all those kinds of factors. So sometimes the wisdom of the crowds is there. We've probably just got a few minutes left. I'm keen to hear any other kind of advice, stories, anecdotes that you might have across, particularly this kind of cross-functional working and with other teams, whether it's even with finance, or how you're thinking about the communication of the value of the work that you do in this kind of fast changing era.
the number one thing for me is to define value, and for yourself from an SEO perspective, SEO, geo, digital marketing, how do you define value, and to really understand the people you work with on a day-to-day basis, how do they define value, and how can you find common ground? How can you get them excited? Because you mentioned finance. If I go to finance and tell them we've seen an uplift in clicks of 8%, for me, that is something that I'm going to run around my desk yelling, screaming, being really excited. If I tell finance that, they're going to ask, how much extra money have we made from that? Mm-hmm. So don't go excited with that metric. Go excited with a metric of, I have delivered extra value, but also go in with the knowledge that they will ask, how do you know that? Do these customers, those new customers, convert at the same rate? So if you come in and go, at this point, I'm not sure what the conversion rate is, indicative factors show, you make yourself a lot more credible. To us, it might be counterintuitive to not be 100% certain. To a finance person, you're showing that you're being prudent, that you're reporting initial results, and that you are thoroughly investigating before making them official. Yeah. Similarly, if you're speaking to brand marketing people, what matters to them is probably less clicks and more about what percentage of these new customers you've acquired or of these features that you're showing in the SERPs are actually on brand and driving their metrics, their values, and how can they help you help them. So very much think of your target audience internally as well, and that's where the people discipline comes in. It's not just useful if you're a head of a department. Even as an SEO exec, if you've got a really good idea, you're going to be heard by some really senior people if you understand how to speak to them. So make your connections, know your organization, understand how things fit together, because everything and anything can impact SEO positively and negatively. And if you understand how that happens, you can be part of making it positive rather than just becoming a victim of somebody else's actions or worrying about the next Google update. You can have intelligent conversations around what Google values and how everybody can help deliver that for your organization. So if you are in a more fast-moving market and it is more about volume, explain to people that by highlighting that at every touch point, you become more relevant. If it is about information, then those most common points you see in SEO blogs. We all love to talk about rich information. Should it be long posts? Should it be individual posts? That's not what it's all about. What industry are you in? If it is about information and you really want to be the number one answer, then you're, what do they call it now? Answer engine optimization with the little short snippets properly marked up. That might be the thing for you. But if you want to become the trusted source for citations, it might be more about depth. It might be more about make sure that you don't just quote the editor. Say this was written by the fashion editor. Give that person a name. Link it to an editor bio that shows all the stories they've previously written. And then suddenly it isn't about what is in the copy. Suddenly that writer has a sense of ownership over the readers they create. Yeah. So very much do everything in dialogue and understand that, I'm coming back to that, we're all in it together. Ultimately, SEO is the layer over the things we do as a company. Understand that you are part of the company and help everybody else put that SEO mantle on and really become part of the journey.
Yeah,
and it's no longer a dark art or a mystery or something that happens in code.
100%. And I just want to pull out, highlight one of the things you talked about there in terms of the, I think you mentioned it in context of working with the finance team, but I think it applies to other teams as well, whether it's product or experimentation, is that idea of showing the results that you are confident in, the areas that are still unknowns, the things that are assumptions, the guardrail metrics around them. And, if you're able to say to finance, like you say, we've driven this many more clicks, our guardrail metrics suggest that conversion rate held up, and therefore we can make some assumptions and we can model that out as a revenue impact. That's fine with finance. And I think one of the things that I've struggled to, I think a lot of people who come up through SEO, you see the same in engineering, actually. It's like anywhere where you're not certain, people kind of shy away from putting numbers on things. And it's about, you start to realize that finance has to deal with, yes, they deal with numbers, but actually they deal with uncertainty all day, every day. They don't know what the weather's going to do next week. They don't know what or in a B2B context, they're looking at sales forecasts that are coming from B2B salespeople who are looking at a whole sequence of opportunities and grading the chance of it closing this quarter. And, none of this stuff is certain. And their job actually is to take uncertainty and make financial models out of it and put numbers against it. And they can support you in that, and they can help you in that. And that's one of the things that I think I've learned from the way you've been working is when you've socialized those early results and you've been able to go to teams and say, hey, look, here's what we've seen in the numbers and here's what we know is true. And here's some things that, we have a guardrail metric, or we have an assumption about what that means. Help us firm this up into something that, fits your model, fits your metrics. And typically finance teams in particular, they have their methodologies for doing these things. And they can turn it into something that they then buy into, they believe, and they can help you get the word out into that organization. And I've seen you do that really well. And so I think people should definitely be paying attention to everything you said there in that sequence.
And mix your teams. I think I'm not a statistics person. I've got a degree in anthropology. I understand audiences, I understand people. I'm not that firm on numbers. I think I work really well with our head of experimentation because he's the opposite. And we have some amazing discussions. We have some amazing debates because we tick so differently. But we know that we're ultimately trying to get to the same place. So if you've got a respectful relationship, you don't need to be the same in order to be aligned. It makes it better if you're not.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen that firsthand in making the ideas better, making the analysis better, making you mentioned a few minutes ago, you talked about iteration of test ideas. That's something else that's come up in that kind of context, isn't it? Where, you've seen a result that you think is promising and you want to go down a certain avenue. Experimentation or product has seen something else that they're interested in, and all of a sudden you've got 5 test ideas off the back of one winning test, right? Or one conclusive outcome. So, we could keep talking about this literally all day, but I hope the audience has found something valuable in there. As I say, I've seen you excel at that particular thing of taking all these areas of uncertainty and turn them into stories, turn them into things that change the mind of the organization and align all those people into making everyone part of your team. So keep up the good work on that front, and thank you for joining me for this conversation today, Christine. It's been really good fun, and I hope everybody else has enjoyed learning how John Lewis is set up for the future, having set up their SEO foundations 125 years ago.
Well, thank you for having me.
Anytime. All right, speak to you soon.
Speak soon. Bye.